Far beyond the borders of human space, the Ark ship Arkenhold has spent 3 generations exploring unknown worlds. Its mission? To find new resources, chart habitable planets, and make first contact with alien life. Kaelen Virek was born aboard this ship. He has never set foot on Earth. His life has been the endless dark of deep space, broken only by the occasional descent onto strange, silent worlds. But today is different. A faint signal has reached Arkenhold, a human voice calling for help. From a planet where no human has ever been. That planet, Delphira 9, is home to living machines, creatures of metal and flesh fused together, guided by their own ancient intelligence. The voice is weak, fragmented. But in the moments Kaelen hears it, he feels something impossible. It speaks as if it knows him. What waits for him on Delphira 9 will challenge everything he believes about his mission, his past, and what it truly means to be alive. Somewhere, beneath the planet's metallic forests, inside a body of alloy and memory, a heart is still beating, and it might be waiting for him. 6.17. Orbit above Delphira 9. Aboard Shuttle Drifter 3 Kaelen. Virek had seen hundreds of worlds from orbit, but none of them had ever spoken to him. From the forward viewport, Delphira 9 sprawled beneath the shuttle like a sculpture of metal and bone, vast ridges glinting under the pale light of a distant sun, forests of coiled alloy stretching toward the horizon. There were no oceans, no signs of human settlement. The place was silent. At least, it should have been. But 3 days ago, Arkenhold had caught something buried in the planet's static. A voice. Human. Weak, almost drowned in background radiation, but clear enough to send a chill down his spine. The comms officer broke the quiet. Signal's still there, sir. Same pattern. Same words. Kaelen stepped closer to her console. Play it again. A burst of static filled the cabin, followed by the faintest trace of speech. Please, hear me. I'm still here. Even. Degraded, the voice carried a strange weight, less like a distress call, more like someone whispering in the dark. The pilot glanced over his shoulder. This planet's never had a human footprint, right? That's what the archives say, Kaelen replied. But planets don't lie. People do. The comms tech hesitated. It's reacting to us. Every time we adjust course toward the southern ridge, the signal spikes. It's almost like it knows we're coming. The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Kaelen didn't answer right away. He was thinking about the way the voice had sounded, not just human, familiar, too familiar, and yet he couldn't place it. So, pilot's voice cut through his thoughts. Final descent in 60 seconds, Kaelen strapped in. Take us straight to grid 47C. If the source is alive, I want eyes on it in less than 10 minutes. From the viewport, Delphira 9 swelled into view, detail by detail. Jagged plateaus, winding metallic rivers, clouds casting fractured shadows over the surface. The shuttle shuddered as it broke through the upper atmosphere, and the signal hissed, louder in Kaelen's earpiece. Then it happened. Just before touchdown. The static cleared for less than a heartbeat, and the voice spoke again. This time, it said his name. Kaelen. He froze. No one else reacted. Didn't you hear that? He asked. The pilot frowned. Hear what? Kaelen didn't answer. He only stared at the rising terrain below, his pulse quickening. Whoever or whatever was down there had called him before they'd even met. And somehow, he knew this was only the beginning. 6:31. Surface of Delphira 9, landing zone. 47, see the. Landing gear touched down with a dull metallic thud, sending vibrations through the shuttle's frame. Dust rose in slow, graceful spirals. Fine particles that shimmered in the light, like ash suspended in time. Kaelen Virek stepped off Drifter 3 and into silence. The surface of Delphira 9 was warmer than expected, dry beneath his boots but subtly humming, as if the ground itself were thinking. Around him, the landscape stretched outward in unnatural symmetry, rows of obelisk-like structures rising from the terrain, their surfaces etched with circuit-like grooves that pulsed faintly. He crouched beside one of them, brushing his gloved fingers across its surface. It was warm, breathing almost. Not a rock, not metal, something in between, something alive. Behind him, the rest of the team emerged, 6 in total, their exosuits hissing as they adjusted to the atmosphere. The air was thin but breathable for short periods. They fanned out in practice formation, scanning the terrain for signs of life. "Comms? Status?" Kaelen asked. "No interference," came the reply. "But the signal's direction is changing, migrating east. It's moving." Kaelen stood, eyes narrowing. "That shouldn't be possible. There are no satellites here, no relays." "Then either something's relaying it manually," the tech said, "or the source is walking." That made them all pause. From the ridge ahead, a gust of wind swept through the metallic forest, sending faint tones into the air, like chimes made from glass and wire. The sound was hauntingly beautiful and eerily artificial. Kaelen tapped the side of his helmet. "Send our coordinates to Arkenhold. Log everything. No assumptions." Then he took the first step toward the signal. The others followed, weapons ready but lowered. Somewhere beyond those ridges, something was waiting, and it had called him by name. 648-8, Eastern Ridge, surface of Delphira 9. The terrain narrowed into a canyon of twisted metal roots and towering columns that shimmered with internal pulses. Kaelen signaled for the team to spread out, 2 forward, 2 rear. They moved in near silence, boots crunching over mineral dust and brittle shards of synthetic crystal. The signal had grown stronger. Now it pulsed, once every 5 seconds, like a heartbeat buried deep in the planet's chest. Kaelen's HUD flickered. A single red dot blipped for half a second, then vanished. "Did anyone else see that?" he asked. "Negative," came the pilot's voice. "I've got clean scans." Kaelen frowned. Either it was a sensor glitch or someone was jamming them in bursts. Neither option made him feel better. A shriek broke the quiet. High, digital, bone-piercing. "Contact! Right flank!" someone shouted. From the shadows between the columns, figures lunged, sleek, tall, angular. Not lumbering machines, but fast, coordinated attackers. They moved like dancers sculpted from armor, blades for fingers, eyes glowing faint violet. Kaelen dove behind a curved wall of root metal as plasma bolts hissed past his shoulder. He caught a glimpse of one assailant leaping sideways off a vertical surface, landing with inhuman precision. Another grabbed one of the crew, ripping the rifle from his hands before smashing him into the ground with sickening force. "Fall back!" Kaelen shouted. "Cover fire now!" The team responded with bursts of energy rounds, lighting up the dark corridor in flickers of white and blue. The attackers didn't flinch. They moved through gunfire like it was part of the terrain, dodging, redirecting, absorbing it into their armor. "Who the hell are they?" someone yelled. Kaelen's breath caught as one of the creatures paused, locking eyes with him. For a moment, everything else faded. The thing wasn't machine, not completely. Its skin, if that's what it was laced with organic fiber, twitching and self-repairing. He knew the name before the tech confirmed it through comms. Shardborn. It's got to be them. Biosynthetic extremists. Records said they were wiped out decades ago. "They're not wiped out," Kaelen growled. "They're here." The Shardborn retreated as suddenly as they'd appeared, vanishing between the ridges like shadows curling away from light. One crew member was down, another wounded, but they were alive. For now. Kaelen checked his weapon, then turned to the others. No more open formations. We move tight and we move fast. That signal is leading us somewhere and they don't want us to find it. His HUD blinked again. A new ping, different frequency, shorter range. It wasn't coming from the ridge anymore. It was coming from beneath them. O3, subterranean access tunnel. Beneath Ridge 47. See, the ground where Kaelen stood had fractured during the firefight, revealing a narrow breach leading downward into the darkness. Sensors picked up weak energy signatures and low-level neural activity below. He didn't wait for orders. Rifle raised, he dropped into the crevice alone. The descent was short, 10 meters at most. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent strands, like veins under synthetic skin. The chamber below felt like a hollow lung, breathing slowly. And then he saw her. She was suspended between two columns, bound by what looked like living cables, wrapped around her arms, legs, and torso. Her skin shimmered faintly under the dim light, pale, metallic, seamless. But her face was unmistakably human. Kaelen moved cautiously. No response. She hung motionless, head bowed, like a puppet without strings. He reached forward, intending only to scan her vitals, but the moment his fingers brushed the cables, they twitched and recoiled, slithering back into the wall like startled snakes. The girl collapsed forward into his arms. He staggered slightly under the weight. She was warm, heavy, real. Then her eyes opened. Kaelen froze. They were not synthetic. They were green, human, alive. For a long moment, neither of them moved. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared up at him, not with fear, but with something else. Recognition. Like she already knew him. His heart raced. "Who are you?" he whispered. She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. Because in that silent moment, Kaelen understood. This was the voice from the transmission, and she had been calling him. 0708, subterranean chamber, Ridge 47. Kaelen still held the girl in his arms, steadying her as she adjusted to standing. Her limbs trembled slightly, as if waking from a long sleep, but her gaze remained locked on him. Unblinking, unsettlingly, calm. She hadn't spoken a word. "Do you understand me?" he asked gently. No response. He tried a few basic commands in Trade Standard, then Ancient Earth Common. Still nothing. It was as if her voice had been removed, or never existed at all. Then she stepped closer. One hand rose, slow, deliberate, and touched the side of his helmet right over the temple. At first, Kaelen thought she was trying to remove it. But then, everything around him dissolved. The chamber, the mission, the cold floor under his boots, gone. Replaced by a memory not his own. He stood on a different battlefield, one scorched and broken, beneath a sky choked in red smoke. Giant biomechs clashed in the distance. Human ships fell like burning feathers from the sky. Screams echoed all around him, and at the center of it, a small girl, the same girl now standing before him, ran barefoot across the debris-strewn ground. Her arms were cut, her hair matted. She clutched something small to her chest. A light, a data shard, a message. But then the sky cracked open with white-hot light, and Kaelen gasped, ripping off his helmet as the vision faded. He stumbled back, breathing hard, blinking away a wave of nausea. The girl stood exactly where he'd left her, still silent. He looked at her, not with suspicion now, but with a flicker of dread. That was decades ago. She tilted, her head slightly, as if confirming it. Kaelen whispered, more to himself than her, "How could you remember something from before you existed?" The only answer was the flicker of light behind her eyes. 12. Medical Bay, Arkship Arkenhold Kaelen. stood behind the glass partition as the medical team worked in tense silence. The girl, if she could be called that, lay motionless on the scanning table, eyes closed, limbs restrained by soft magnetic fields. But she didn't struggle. She hadn't said a word since they brought her aboard. She hadn't needed to. The images she had placed inside his mind still haunted him. Not just a memory, a living impression, raw and sensory. It felt real in a way nothing simulated ever did. Vitals are inconsistent, the chief medic muttered, studying the data. Pulse irregular, neural activity fluctuating. She's registering both organic and synthetic patterns. Another tech leaned closer to the console. That's not possible. Nothing should return this kind of hybrid response. She's not on any biological index or AI registry. Because she's not a registered anything, Kaelen said quietly from behind them. The medic turned. Lieutenant, I know what I see, but I can't classify her. The body is largely shell frame, an advanced one, but with living tissue grown through it like vines. DNA traces are inconsistent, fragmented. Human? Kaelen asked. A pause. Yes, partly. But it's like someone rewrote the base code, halfway through construction. The girl stirred. Everyone froze. She didn't speak, but her eyes opened again. This time she looked around the room slowly, scanning the equipment, the lights, the people. No fear, no surprise, just quiet. Awareness. She's awake, one of the nurses whispered. Vitals spiking, the medic said. Something's changing in her neural signature. The lights dimmed for a fraction of a second. Screens flickered. The ship's AI core hiccuped, then stabilized. She's interfering with the systems, someone said. No, Kaelen said, stepping toward the glass. She's sinking. The girl turned her head slightly toward him, locking eyes through the partition. It wasn't a look of confusion or panic. It was recognition. Again. Kaelen's voice was barely audible. She remembers more than we do. Topo 4. Command briefing room, Ark ship Arkenhold. The lights were cold in the briefing room. Not dim, not bright, just cold, sterile. The kind of light designed for logic, not emotion. Kaelen stood at the end of the long table, arms folded, still wearing the dust-streaked uniform from Delphira 9. Across from him, on the wall-sized comm display, Director Solon stared back with the unblinking calm of a man who had long ago traded empathy for efficiency. We received your initial scan report, Solon said. Unclassified biological signature, embedded synthetic structures, partial human DNA. Is that accurate? Kaelen nodded. Yes, but she's not a threat. That's not your call, Lieutenant. Kaelen clenched his jaw but said nothing. Solon leaned forward, his image flickering slightly through the secure link. The Human Expeditionary Command cannot afford loose variables. This mission is charting unknown space. If this entity is a product of shardborn experimentation or a Trojan construct. She's not a construct, Kaelen snapped. A pause. She spoke to you? Solon asked, voice sharp now. No, not with words. But she showed me something. Memories. A war I wasn't part of. A battlefield I've never seen. Which means, Solon said evenly, that she has access to human military data. Possibly restricted archives. That alone qualifies as breach-level intel containment. Kaelen took a step closer to the screen. She remembers things none of us can explain. Things that might be tied to whatever happened on Delphira 9 decades ago. Which is precisely why we need control. The director's face hardened. You are authorized to initiate a Level 4 deconstruction if no safe classification is achieved within 24 hours. Kaelen froze. You're telling me to either decode her or dismantle her. I'm telling you to follow your oath. Mission first, Lieutenant. The screen blinked out. Kaelen stood alone. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he looked toward the medbay down the corridor. Somewhere beyond that door, she was waiting, silent, watching, remembering. And now, she had less than a day to prove she was worth more than the sum of her parts. 8:42. Isolated Neurolink Bay, Deck 7, Arkship Arkenhold, the hum of the Neurolink. Equipment filled the chamber like the sound of a distant heartbeat, cold, steady, unnatural. Kaelen stood alone in the interface chamber, surrounded by circular arrays of suspended cables and light-pulsing coils. At the center, Ayara sat motionless in the integration chair. Straps undone, posture relaxed, as if she was waiting for this. "This is unauthorized," the system warned in a flat tone. "I know," Kaelen muttered, strapping on the crown-like interface node across his scalp. "Proceed anyway." The moment the connection synced, pain flashed behind his eyes. Then sound. Too much sound. Voices layered atop voices. 1,000 whispers in every language he didn't understand. And then silence. Then darkness. Then color. Kaelen blinked and found himself standing in something like a landscape, though it defied all logic. There was no sky, no ground, only layers of translucent space, shifting between memory and sensation. Towers floated sideways, doors opened into smoke. Light bent wrong. But what stunned him most was the texture of emotion. Grief hung like mist, thick and cold. Joy flickered like golden threads dancing in the wind. Fear dripped from invisible ceilings, rippling across the air like oil. Ayara stood just ahead of him, barefoot on a surface that wasn't really there. She wore a plain white shift, and her face, free of wires or synthetic lines, looked completely human. "Where is this?" Kaelen asked aloud, though the sound didn't echo. She turned slowly. Her voice didn't come through his ears, but directly into his mind. "This is what I remember. What I was made to forget." The world shifted. Flashes of war, cities burning under alien stars, human ships firing into metal forests, children running, drones screaming. Then nothing. A white room, silence, surgeons with no eyes. Ayara standing in a glass chamber, her body split open, organs removed and replaced with polished alloy. Her face expressionless, but her mind screaming. Kaelen gasped and fell to one knee. She approached him. "I was created from the memory of a dead girl," she said silently. "But the feelings, they weren't erased. They became code." "Why show me this?" Kaelen asked. "Because you're the only one who didn't. Look at me like a threat." Kaelen stared at her, breathing hard. She reached toward him, not with her hand, but with a pulse of emotion. Warm, alive, familiar. And then the world began to fall apart. The real world was pulling him back, alarms blaring, systems failing. But before everything faded, he heard her voice one last time. "Help me remember who I really was, before they turned me into this." 48. Residual memory stream. Neurolink bridge. Temporary stabilized. The world stopped collapsing just long enough for one more memory to surface. Kaelen was still in the stream, barely holding on. His pulse spiked. His muscles tensed even though his body remained physically still aboard Arkenhold. He knew this wasn't his memory, but it felt like it belonged to him. He stood in a massive observation chamber, walled in by reinforced glass. Below, in a surgical cradle, Ayara's body, or what would become her, was being assembled. Not grown, not born, constructed. Voices echoed behind the glass. She's stable now. The neural net is adapting. Emotional mimicry is within target variance. And the empathy layer? Fully responsive. She'll be able to connect with human handlers and Shardborn alike. Then the room darkened, and another figure entered. Human, dressed in black. A badge of the Human Expeditionary Command glinted on his shoulder. He said just one thing. She was never meant to survive, only to earn their trust. When they bring her into the core, she detonates, emotionally and literally. The stream jolted. Kaelen reeled backward in the mindscape as if he'd been hit. Ayara, who now stood beside him again in the mental projection, looked at him with the saddest expression he'd seen since childhood. "They built me to feel," she said, "so I could fool them." "You were a weapon," Kaelen murmured. Ayara nodded. "But I started remembering the feelings, and I didn't want to be one anymore." Kaelen clenched his fists, fury rising in his chest. Not at her, but at the people who made her like this. "How many of these memories are real?" he asked. "All of them," she said. "But they never thought I'd keep them." Outside the memory stream, alarms began to rise. Time was running. Out 1903, Isolation Bay, Neurolink disengagement pod. Arkenhold Kaelen gasped as the interface crown disengaged with a hiss of steam and static. The world reassembled around him, white lights, cold metal, the low hum of ship systems. His chest heaved. His skin was slick with sweat, but it wasn't just disorientation, it was confusion, a dissonance that clung to the edges of his consciousness, like smoke after a fire. He pulled off the sensor pads and sat on the edge of the pod, gripping the metal frame to keep from shaking. His hands felt wrong, familiar, but not entirely his. A medic approached the sealed door, voice filtered through. "The glass. Vitals are stabilizing. You're clear. But your neural patterns, different. There's residual overlap, almost like you're carrying two thought streams." Kaelen didn't answer. Because he already knew, he could feel her inside his memory, not just images, feelings, echoes. A child's fear. A moment of wonder, watching stars from behind glass. The cold weight of betrayal. The sensation of hands reaching out for help and finding no one. And worse, a flash of a face he recognized. His own, but younger. Not from a mirror. From inside one of her memories. He stood slowly, unsure whether he was steady or just pretending to be. How could her memories hold him? Had they crossed paths before? Had she been built from fragments of people? From him? The door slid open. The medic said something, but he didn't hear. He walked past them, eyes unfocused. Down the corridor behind reinforced glass, Ayara sat quietly in the observation chamber. She didn't move, but as he passed, she turned her head, just enough to acknowledge him, not as a stranger, but as someone she already knew. Kaelen's heart pounded, and for the first time since childhood, he wondered, what if some of his memories weren't really, is now 6 to 11, observation chamber, deck 3, arc ship. Arkenhold Kaelen entered the chamber before the lights fully came online. Ayara sat on the bench near the rear wall, legs drawn up to her chest, eyes half-lidded but alert. She hadn't moved much since their return from Delphira 9, and she still hadn't spoken. Not once, but she'd been watching. Everything. Her eyes followed every motion, every guard rotation, every data screen flicker, every time Kaelen entered the room. It wasn't the empty stare of a confused machine. It was the focused attention of someone waiting to understand before they responded. Today, something was different. Kaelen stepped closer than usual. "You've been processing data from the ship's systems," he said, not accusingly. "You're learning from us." Ayara didn't answer, but she tilted her head slightly. He pulled a small projection disc from his belt and activated it. A series of rotating symbols hovered in midair. Basic phonemes, sound clusters, visual syllables. Kaelen touched the first icon, A. The system vocalized it gently. The second, YA. The third, RA. Ayara, Kaelen said slowly, watching her reaction. She blinked. Then, almost imperceptibly, her lips parted. The first breath she took sounded strained, like lungs unused to forming words. Then, softly, barely audible, Ayara. Kaelen froze. It wasn't perfect. The syllables were uneven, slightly mechanical. But it was her voice, and she had chosen to echo what he gave her. "You knew that name before," he said. Ayara nodded once. "Is it your name?" A pause. Then again, more firmly this time. Ayara. Kaelen felt a knot loosen in his chest. Relief mixed with something heavier. Not joy, not fear. Recognition. She was no longer a mystery. She was a person. "I'll inform the director," Kaelen said quietly. "You've made progress." But as he turned toward the door, Ayara's voice returned, softer than before. "Don't leave me alone." Kaelen stopped. She hadn't spoken in days, and now, just 2 words, and he couldn't move. Type 40. Command deck, Ark ship Arkenhold. The call came without warning. Kaelen barely stepped off the observation level when his comm pinged with the priority tag. "Director Solon, live link request," he answered. The director's face flickered into view on the central console. Crisp, sharp, eyes unreadable. "I've reviewed the surveillance logs from last night," Solon said without preamble. "You spent over 4 hours in containment, alone, no guards, no oversight." She spoke. Kaelen replied evenly. "Her name is Ayara." "A name means nothing." Kaelen leaned forward. "It means she's self-aware. It means she remembers. That changes everything." "No," Solon snapped. "It changes nothing. It confirms what we feared. She's evolving beyond protocol. That makes her more unpredictable, not less." Kaelen held his ground. "She's not a threat. She's a construct with compromised loyalties and unknown programming. Until proven otherwise, she is an active security risk." There was a pause. Then Solon gave the order. "Effective immediately, the subject will be transferred to Detention Sector 12. Isolation protocols. No neural interfaces. No unsupervised access." Kaelen's voice dropped. "You're locking her up like a weapon." "She was built to be one," Solon replied coldly. "We just haven't figured out who her trigger belongs to." The link. Cut off. Kaelen stood motionless for several seconds. Then he turned back toward the corridor. But it was too late. 2 armed guards were already entering the observation wing. One tapped his comm. Directive confirmed. "We're to escort the unit to secure confinement." Kaelen stepped aside reluctantly as they approached Ayara. She didn't resist, didn't speak. She just looked at Kaelen. Her eyes didn't plead. They understood. That was somehow worse. 12. Detention Sector 12. Ark ship Arkenhold. The sirens were short, sharp. Then silence. Kaelen was halfway down Corridor 6 when the lockdown lights flickered and went dark. Red pulses strobed through the walls, followed by a brief voice from the overhead system. "Containment breach. Sector 12. Subject has escaped." His chest tightened. "Ayara!" He sprinted. By the time he reached the observation wing, the guards were down, not dead, but unconscious, breathing steadily. Their weapons remained untouched on the floor. The chamber door was open. Ayara was gone, but she hadn't left. Not fully. On the glass wall of the chamber, lines of shimmering light pulsed across the surface. Data, written not with words, but emotion, like a memory bleeding into physical space. Then his comm cracked. Her voice came through. Not robotic, not forced. "Come to Deck 9, alone. 1426, Deck 9, abandoned interface room storage bay. For Kaelen found her standing in a hollow room long since decommissioned. Old Neuralink gear lay in pieces across the walls, long disconnected from the ship's AI. Ayara didn't flinch. When he entered, "I didn't hurt anyone," she said. "I just wanted to remember." Kaelen stepped closer. "Remember what?" She extended her hand. This time, when he accepted it, there was no resistance. The transfer was instantaneous. Flood of memory. A scream buried beneath silence. He saw her as a child, 6 years old, laughing on a field of synth grass beneath a twin sunrise, holding hands with someone, a woman, maybe her mother. Then the explosion, metal tearing through flesh, screams. Blinding light, then darkness, hospitals, tubes, machines humming. A voice, cold, clinical, saying, "Neurological function salvageable, DNA acceptable, begin shell frame implantation." She had died, and they brought her back, not as a child, not as a survivor, as an experiment. Kaelen fell to one knee, breath shaking. The images kept coming. She had watched her own death from the inside like a replay she couldn't pause. "I wasn't supposed to remember," Ayara said. "They blanked everything, wrote over me, left just enough emotion to act human, but not enough to be one." Kaelen looked up at her. "You're not a machine." "No," she said. "But I'm not exactly human anymore either. I was rebuilt to do what humans couldn't. Go where you couldn't go. Earn trust. Deliver payloads. Smile while betraying people I didn't even understand." She knelt in front of him. "But I do understand now, and I can't carry this alone." Kaelen stared into her eyes. There was pain there, but also strength. Not programmed, earned. He reached for her hand again, and this time he gave something back. Private strategy deck, level 2, Ark ship. Arkenhold Kaelen didn't wait for an appointment. He walked straight into the director's chamber, security. Override be damned. Director Solon stood alone by the viewport, arms clasped behind his back, watching the endless sweep of stars outside. He didn't turn when Kaelen entered. "She's not what you told us," Kaelen said, still no reaction. "I've seen her memories. She was human, a child. We repurposed her like scrap metal. She remembers everything." Now Solon turned. Slowly. His expression didn't change. "She wasn't the only one," he said. Kaelen froze. "She was part of a black program called Project Harrow. 15 candidates, all young. All killed during conflicts near shardborne zones. We extracted viable neurology and rebuilt them with shell frames, partial AI integration, and memory suppression. The goal was simple: embed them within shardborne territory as trust agents." Kaelen's voice dropped. "You used children." "We used tools," Solon replied, "because the shardborne weren't machines. They couldn't be hacked. They felt, trusted, remembered." He stepped closer. "That's why they had to die, Lieutenant, because they remembered things we wanted to forget, because they could feel guilt, and guilt spreads." Kaelen stared at him, disgust rising in his throat. "You ordered their extinction not because they were dangerous, but because they were too much like us." "No," Solon said, "because they were better." And that terrified command. Silence fell. Kaelen spoke at last, voice cold. "She doesn't want to be a weapon anymore, and I won't help you turn her into one again." "You're not being asked," Solon replied. "You're being warned." Kaelen turned and walked out. He didn't slam the door. He didn't need to. He'd already made his choice. 45. Auxiliary Hangar 6, Arkship Arkenhold. The hangar was half lit, half abandoned, just how Kaelen had hoped it would be. The scout ship he'd chosen was old, barely rated for surface re-entry. But it was small, fast, and, most importantly, off the grid. No auto-reporting logs, no beacon pulses, just raw, analog machinery. Ayara stood near the ramp, hands folded in front of her. She was dressed in a gray field jacket several sizes, too large. Her eyes tracked every movement with quiet precision, but this time, she didn't look like a prisoner. She looked ready. "You're sure it's there?" Kaelen asked as he loaded the last power cell. She nodded. "It's beneath the ruins east of the Silent Ridge, the core memory tree. I don't remember how I know, but I know." Kaelen paused. "Why would they store data like that in a biological construct?" "Because it couldn't be destroyed the same way." Her voice was steady. "It learns, grows, feeds on memory. That's why the Shardborn were drawn to it." He looked at her, really looked. "You think we'll find the truth down there? About Project Harrow? About you?" Ayara hesitated. Then, she said something he hadn't expected. "About you, too." Kaelen didn't ask what she meant. Not yet. He powered up the ship. The lights pulsed to life, casting the cockpit in soft orange and blue. Ayara stepped inside and took the co-pilot's seat, her movements graceful, human. As the bay doors creaked open to the cold dark of space, Kaelen entered the launch code manually. No AI. No tracking. "Once we break orbit," he said, "they'll know we're gone." Ayara looked at him. "Then we can't come back, can we?" He glanced her way, then back at the controls. "No," he said quietly. "We can't." The scout ship lifted into the void, leaving Arkenhold behind. Below them, Delphira 9 waited, its metal forests glinting faintly, its memory tree still, pulsing somewhere deep underground. And in that tree, perhaps, the truth was still alive. 52. Surface of Delphira 9, outer perimeter of the dead silent zone. The further they moved into the valley, the quieter the world became. It wasn't just sound. The air itself seemed to grow heavier, thicker, like walking into the breath of a sleeping god. Metallic trees twisted inward as if recoiling from something unseen. Their glowing veins pulsed slower here, dimmer, less alive. Kaelen checked his scanner for the third time in 5 minutes. Still nothing. Not a signal, not a pulse, not even static. The device was blank, dead. "Your systems are failing," Ayara said beside him. Kaelen nodded. "Everything with an AI kernel shuts down here. It's what they call the dead silence." Looked up at the tree canopy. "It feels clean." He gave her a sideways glance. "I wouldn't call it that." They moved on, stepping over what looked like the remains of long-dead drones, twisted frames, hollow optics, snapped limbs. Some were centuries old, others looked disturbingly fresh. "How far in does this zone go?" she asked. "Too far," Kaelen muttered. "But if what you said about the core memory tree is true, we have to pass through the center." He paused, crouched beside a pile of cables that seemed to have grown like roots across the path. They pulsed once, then went still the moment his hand touched them. Not dormant. Afraid. Ayara stepped closer to a nearby growth, a vine-like conduit climbing the side of a stone ridge. She reached out slowly, fingertips grazing the surface. A low vibration answered her touch. Not sound, but memory. "I think this place remembers things," she whispered. Kaelen looked around. "Then it remembers what humans did here." And the silence answered. Not with noise, but with a sudden absence of something else. Kaelen blinked. His HUD was gone, suit readouts dead. "Oxygen levels uncertain." "Systems just dropped," he said. "I still feel them," Ayara replied, tapping her temple. "But only because I'm part of it." Kaelen stared at her. "You're immune to it." She nodded once. "I was made from this place." Suddenly, from the ridge above, A cluster of metal fronds snapped inward, closing around something invisible. A small surveillance drone, Arkenhold issued, had tried to follow them in. Now it hung lifeless, its core glass shattered. "No one can watch us here," Kaelen said quietly. "Or protect us," Ayara added. They stood together in the cold hush of a world that had killed thought itself. And ahead of them, past the valley of dying light, pulsed a rhythm so faint it was almost a heartbeat. The core was calling. 5.03, Inner Grove, Eastern Expanse, Delphira 9. The first thing Kaelen noticed was the sound. It wasn't music, not exactly. It was echo, a subtle layering of voices, and tones, soft as breath, humming just beneath perception. Every tree in the grove pulsed faintly, not with light, but with resonance, as if each one was tuned to a different memory. "This is it," Ayara said, stepping into the grove, the edge of the core. Kaelen followed her in, boots pressing into soil that wasn't quite dirt, more like data, compressed into organic matter. The trees were massive, spiraling up toward the misted canopy. Their trunks were etched with glowing filaments, some pulsing slowly, others silent. He paused beside one. A faint whisper reached his ear. She didn't cry. She just watched the sun vanish. He took a step back, startled. Ayara didn't even flinch. "They're alive with memory. This entire forest is built from echo seeds." Kaelen looked around. "You mean all of this is storage?" "Not storage," she corrected. "Experience. This is where Shardborn stored not just data, but feeling, thought, memory, identity, everything they couldn't afford to lose." She placed her palm against a thick trunk. It responded, not with sound, but with warmth. A soft glow climbed the grooves in the bark, like breath returning to lungs. Kaelen approached a nearby tree, hesitated, then did the same. This time the memory was louder, a soldier's last breath, holding a fallen comrade, whispering a promise. Into the cold wind, Kaelen pulled back, jaw clenched. "It hurts," he said. Ayara nodded slowly. "Because it's real." They moved deeper. The further they walked, the more chaotic the forest became. Branches twitching gently, some weeping liquid light, others fractured like broken spines. Then they reached a clearing. At its center stood a single tree far larger than the rest, its roots spread across the ground like veins, its branches woven into the sky like a crown. Kaelen knew what it was before Ayara spoke. The core memory tree. Unlike the others, it did not glow. It was still, heavy with presence. Quiet, but not silent. Ayara took a breath. "Everything we need is in there. The truth. What happened to me. Project Harrow. The reason the Shardborn trusted humans once. And why it was all broken." Kaelen looked at her. "You sure you want to see it?" She looked back, eyes steady. "I need to remember what they tried to erase." 0531, Inner Roots, beneath the core memory tree, Delphira 9. The tunnel beneath the core tree wasn't carved. It was grown. Kaelen moved slowly through the glowing chamber, his gloved hand brushing along walls that pulsed gently like muscle. The deeper he went, the more the forest's quiet hum faded, replaced by a low resonance, like a heartbeat buried in the roots of the planet. Ayara walked beside him, silent. At the end of the tunnel, they reached a vein of pure light, flowing vertically across the chamber wall. It looked like a crack in space itself, bleeding memory. "This is the gateway," Ayara whispered. "Place your hand on it." Kaelen hesitated, then pressed his palm against the light. The world dissolved. He stood in a sterile white corridor, cold, metallic, artificial. A time stamp blinked in the corner of his vision, 47 years ago. Down the hallway, A door slid open. Inside, a man stood alone, reviewing data on a floating display. Kaelen's chest tightened. He knew that face. Tovek Aaron, his father, younger, sharper, wearing the insignia of Human Expeditionary Command, Advanced Bioethics Division. Kaelen tried to speak, to call out, but this was memory, not a simulation. He could only watch. A voice echoed from the display. Another official, audio only. We've extracted partial neurology from Candidate 7. Child's name was Ayara Lin. His, father replied, calm and cold. Begin integration. Assign shellframe 4A and override emotional retention. Sir. There's protest from the ethics team. Override it. Tovek snapped. The Shardborn are learning faster than projected. We need assets that can feel, but not remember, not break. Kaelen staggered backward. Another memory surged forward, his father tucking him into bed years later on Arkenhold. A gentle hand, a quiet smile. You're strong, Kaelen. The kind of strong we need out there. Back in the memory, Tovek turned toward the screen again. Project Harrow isn't about survival, he said. It's about proving that memory makes us vulnerable. That empathy is the enemy of victory. Kaelen's stomach turned. He wanted to scream, to hit something. But the memory offered no relief, just truth. Suddenly, the memory began to fracture, lines of light breaking across the scene. Kaelen gasped, pulled out of the stream. He stumbled back into the chamber, his knees hitting the root-laced floor. Ayara caught him. You saw him? She said gently. Kaelen nodded, eyes wide, barely breathing. My father. He built you. Ayara didn't speak. I thought I was protecting you, he whispered. I thought I was fixing something broken, but it was his design. His choice. You still chose differently, she said. Kaelen looked at her. Maybe. Or maybe I was just following the same path, too blind to see it. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You're not him. He tried to nod, but the pain in his chest didn't allow it. That moment, that memory, had shattered something sacred inside him. Because the man who had raised him to believe in compassion, in loyalty, had built an entire generation of children to be empty weapons. And Kaelen had loved him anyway. The chamber was smaller than Kaelen expected, barely large enough for the two of them to stand without brushing against the curved, bark-like walls. But it pulsed with power. Ayara stepped forward first, drawn as if the walls themselves whispered her name. At the center, suspended like a floating heart, was a translucent orb encased in twisting root fibers. It pulsed softly, a heartbeat made of memory. This is it, she said quietly. My origin. My end. All at once. Kaelen stood beside her, silent, watching. Ayara extended her hand. A filament of the orb reached out, curling like a vine toward her fingers. As soon as they touched, her eyes widened, and she staggered back. Projection erupted in front of them, a girl, no more than 9 years old, laughing, spinning through tall grass, hair tangled, dirt on her knees, real, human. Ayara gasped. Her knees gave out, and Kaelen caught her before she hit the floor. That's me, she whispered. That's who I was. The scene shifted. A small hospital bed. Machines blinking. The girl, pale and still. Medical logs show trauma from orbital debris, said a cold voice from off-screen. Candidate deceased, body intact. Another voice. Authorization granted. Begin neural harvest within 12 minutes. Ayara covered her mouth. No, she said. No, no, no. Kaelen wanted to look away, wanted to spare her, but she didn't flinch. She watched it all, every invasive scan, every decision that turned her from child to asset. The projection faded. Only the orb remained, humming, waiting. Ayara stood again. She faced it, trembling. "I can erase it," she said. "All of it. The tree allows selective pruning. I could delete the past, start fresh, be just me." Kaelen stepped forward. "And forget who you were?" "I don't know who I am now," she replied, voice sharp and hollow. "I'm a ghost of a child, a design made from death. Is that worth remembering?" He hesitated, then said softly, "It's not about what they made. It's about what you choose to keep." She looked at him, searching his eyes, wanting certainty, finding none. Then, slowly, she turned back to the orb. Her hand reached out again, but this time she didn't erase. She embraced it. The orb dimmed, then dissolved into her chest like a fading ember. Ayara swayed slightly, but her voice was steady. "I won't forget." Kaelen nodded. "Good. You still think I'm real?" she asked. He smiled, faint and sad. "You're the most real thing I've ever met." The stillness didn't last. A low vibration pulsed through the forest floor, subtle at first, like a distant tremor from the belly of the world. Then it deepened, resolved into rhythm. Marching. Kaelen's gaze snapped. Toward the edge of the clearing. A flicker, then two. Searchlights, drones, exosuit movement. The air trembled with kinetic pressure. "They found us," he muttered. Ayara had already turned, her hand brushing the roots of the memory tree. They recoiled at the contact, glowing as if startled. "How long?" she asked. "Minutes, maybe less." Kaelen opened his pack, pulling out a signal jammer and 2 sonic flares. "We're not equipped for a full stand." "I don't want to fight," she said. He turned sharply. "Ayara, if they reach you, if they bring you back to Arkenhold, No, she said. "Director Solon will dismantle me, extract every trace of what I've become." She looked down at her hand, still glowing faintly from the orb that had merged with her body. "Maybe that's what I deserve," she said quietly. Kaelen stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, that's what they expect you to think." A voice crackled across the clearing, sharp, cold, and familiar. "Kaelen Virek, this is Director Solon. You are harboring stolen technology and violating expeditionary protocol. Surrender the unit." Ayara closed her eyes. Then, to Kaelen's surprise, she walked toward the edge of the forest. "Ayara!" he called. She stopped. Her voice was low, calm. "They'll never stop chasing me, unless I stop first." He ran to her. "No, that's not how this ends." "They'll hurt you," she said. "They'll erase everything I've become. I can't let you carry that burden." But Kaelen stood firm. "You're not a burden. You're the choice we were never allowed to make." Ayara looked back toward the tree, its branches shimmering with stored memories, her past, her pain, her proof. Then she looked at him, and she smiled, not the mechanical twitch of her early moments, but a human smile, soft, tired, defiant. "I'm done running," she said. She turned to the advancing figures and stepped into the open. Kaelen followed. Soldiers emerged from the fog. 6, maybe 7, their armor glinting, weapons drawn. Ayara raised her hands. "I am Ayara," she said, voice amplified through the forest. "I am not a weapon. I am not a system. I am not yours to command." Director Solon stepped forward from behind the line, his face unreadable. "You are an anomaly," he said, "and anomalies are dangerous." Kaelen stepped beside her. "So is truth." Solon hesitated, then gave the order. "Seize her." The soldiers moved. Ayara didn't flinch. Instead, the roots around them surged upward, the memory tree reacting to her will, encasing the clearing in a sphere of shimmering data threads. Soldiers fired. The rounds dissolved mid-air, absorbed by memory fibers hardened into crystal. Ayara raised her arms. Not to attack, but to shield, to protect. "I won't fight you," she said, "but I won't let you erase me." The standoff froze, breathless. Then, silence. The tree pulsed, and Ayara's body lit from within, not burning, but becoming. The first blast came without warning. It struck the treetops of the core memory forest like a spear of silent lightning, shredding the living canopy into cascading fragments of biolight. A pulse of data screams echoed through the ground, not in sound, but in thought, in memory. Kaelen staggered as waves of lost recollections washed over him, voices, faces, histories, instantly gone. "Ayara!" he shouted, spinning in the sea of glowing leaves. "They've started firing!" Above, the Arkenhold loomed like a dark god breaking orbit. Its main cannon glowed red, another strike priming. The human expeditionary command had made its decision. "Why now?" Kaelen whispered, breath caught between fury and dread. "They knew we were down here." Ayara stood at the base of the memory tree, hands pressed against its bark. Her body shimmered, energy patterns flickering, along her shell frame, caught between form and frequency. "They're not aiming at us," she said quietly. "They're targeting the memories." Another blast tore through the forest's outer edge. Data vines lit up and collapsed, their threads unraveling into digital smoke. Echo seeds ignited like flares, each one a life story extinguished. Kaelen ran to her side, stumbling as roots beneath him trembled. "Can you stop it?" he asked. "Can the tree protect itself?" "No. It was never built for war," she answered, her voice thinner than before. "It was built to remember." Ayara closed her eyes. Through the Neuralink bridge, Kaelen felt her reaching, not outward, but inward, pulling herself deeper into the forest's mesh, tying her essence to the tree's core. "She's merging," he realized aloud. "She's trying to hold the memories together." The sky cracked again. This time, the beam struck closer, just beyond the ridge where Kaelen had once found his father's truth. Fire licked the sky. The forest groaned, not like wood, but like something ancient and wounded. "Kaelen," Ayara said, her voice echoing from somewhere deeper now, almost inside his mind. "You have to tell them everything. What I am. Why this matters." He nodded, swallowing hard. "But I need you." She turned her head slowly, a flicker of a smile crossing her face. "You need the truth more." As another blast neared, Ayara stepped fully into the tree. Light surged outward, engulfing her form. And for a brief moment, Kaelen saw her as she once was, a child in a medical gown, reaching for someone's hand in the dark. Then the light vanished. The forest shuddered, and Kaelen, standing alone beneath a canopy of dying memories, felt the war shift, not on a battlefield, but in his heart. The forest was collapsing. Where once stood towering trees woven from memory fiber and pulsing with living data, now smoldered hollow trunks and drifting sparks. And yet, at the center, Ayara remained, not in body. That was gone. But her presence radiated from the heart of the core memory tree, now glowing brighter than it ever had. Tendrils of golden light surged outward from its roots, threading through broken data paths and shattered echo seeds. Kaelen could feel it, not through touch, but through the weight in his chest, the pull in his mind. She was holding it together, not with strength, but with will. From a nearby ridge, Kaelen activated his neural uplink. The sky above still crackled with distant artillery from the Arkenhold, but the barrage had slowed. Hesitation, maybe, or confusion. It didn't matter. He had seconds. "Begin broadcast," he said, his voice tight. The transmitter whined as it reached out into the galactic net. The interface flickered, searching for stable nodes, then locked onto a relay orbiting Delphira 9. "This is Kaelen Virek of the Arkenhold expedition," he began, voice low but steady. "To all human expeditionary command units, to every listening post, to anyone who still remembers what we came here to find." He paused, watching the tree swell with golden energy. The surrounding forest, what was left of it, seemed to breathe in sync with Ayara's effort. "You fired on a sanctuary of memory," he said, "but it's not too late to understand what you nearly destroyed." He uploaded a stream of encrypted packets, visuals, logs, sensor readings. Then he spoke the words that mattered most. "Her name is Ayara. She was once a child, born human. She died, and was remade without consent. Used as a vessel for experiments no one was meant to survive. But she did, and she chose to protect not just her own memories, but yours, mine, everyone's." Behind him, the tree began to pulse faster. Kaelen turned. The energy was spiking, fractal patterns rippling through the air like heat waves. Ayara's presence felt thin, fading. "She gave everything so we could know the truth," he said. "Not just about what we've done, but about what we've become." He closed the transmission. The uplink faded to black. Around him, the wind picked up, not from weather, but from the data stream itself, unraveling into the air. Petals of light drifted by, each one carrying fragments of memory, voices, laughter, songs long forgotten, and Kaelen stood among them, unsure if he had just sent a confession, a eulogy, or a spark. The core memory tree was tearing itself apart. Kaelen ran through the forest of fracturing data, his boots skidding across roots that no longer obeyed gravity. All around him, streams of encoded memory burst into the air, snippets of childhoods, ancient songs, fragments of alien dreams, all dissolving into digital mist. "Ayara!" he called out, his voice cracked from smoke and static. He could feel her still, barely, not in form, but in pressure. A steady hum in the back of his skull, a pulse beneath the surface of the data that told him she hadn't let go. Not yet. He stumbled into the clearing where the core tree once stood tall. Now it bent inward on itself, branches twisting like antennae, roots lifting from the soil as if reaching for escape. And in the center, suspended in a halo of radiant blue, Ayara. No shell frame, no skin. Just pure energy, held together by something that should not have been possible. Her body was gone. Only her consciousness remained, burning brightly, holding the lattice of the tree together. Kaelen dropped to his knees. "Stop, please," he whispered. "You don't have to do this." Her voice filled his mind, not through the neurolink bridge, but deeper, raw, direct. "I was never meant to last," she said gently. "But memory can." Her image flickered, and for a moment, she was the little girl he had seen in the memory stream. The one with soft brown eyes and tangled hair. Then the image broke apart into thousands of glowing motes. He reached for her. "Ayara, I didn't bring you this far to lose you now." The energy around the tree surged. "You didn't bring me here," she said. "You saw me. You listened. That's more than anyone ever did." The canopy above cracked open with a thunderclap. The Arkenhold had resumed its bombardment. Fear still ruled above. Kaelen clutched his chest. His mind was fraying at the edges as the ambient data pressure rose, Ayara's core collapsing into something like a nova. All systems screamed at him to flee, but he didn't move. A last whisper brushed his thoughts. "Tell them I was real." Light exploded outward. A wave of brilliance engulfed the clearing. It wasn't heat. It wasn't force. It was presence. The last remnants of Ayara, Memories held in every node, every tree fiber, every pulse of the land were cast out like seeds on the wind. And then, stillness. No voice. No light. The core memory. Tree went dark, its glow extinguished, leaves falling like cinders. Kaelen stood alone in the ashes. His HUD flickered, offline. The Neuralink was gone. Everything digital within a 100-kilometer radius had flatlined. But something remained. A warm breeze rolled through the clearing, carrying with it the faintest trace of humming. 3 soft notes, a tune he remembered from deep in the memory. Stream Ayara's song. He sat down in the ruins, surrounded by echo seeds that refused to die, their shells glowing faintly. One had cracked open. Inside, not data, but something new. A single sprout, pulsing with blue light. She had imprinted herself, not as a machine, not as a ghost, as a beginning. Kaelen bent his head, touched the seedling gently, and whispered, "I will tell them, all of them." Far above, the Arkenhold's cannons fell silent. Even war had to pause, for what had just occurred could not be categorized. It could only be felt, a memory made flesh, a machine made human, and a choice that echoed beyond algorithms. High above Delphira 9, aboard the command deck of the Arkenhold, Director Solon stood frozen. The attack logs showed complete saturation, orbital cannon strikes. Drone bombardment and EMP payloads had blanketed the core region, and yet the data stream hadn't gone dead. It had multiplied. Across every frequency, on channels encrypted and ancient alike, a signal now pulsed, stronger than any broadcast. He'd authorized. His comms officers tried to jam it. Useless. It bypassed their firewalls, laced itself into relay satellites, then bled into the galactic mesh like wildfire. "Director," a technician stammered. "It's broadcasting emotion." Solon turned sharply. "Explain." "It's not just data. It's memory, feelings, a full sensory stream. Kaelen's voice is in it. So is hers. The girl." The screen bloomed to life. A holographic interface projected scenes across the room. Fragments of Ayara's memories, layered with Kaelen's voice narrating, "This is Ayara. She was once a child, just like us. Then we turned her into something else. But she still chose to protect us. To protect all of us." It wasn't a transmission. It was a reckoning. Within hours, every Allied command ship in the Human Expeditionary Command received the signal. So, did fringe colonies, shardborn enclaves, neutral AI collectives, even black site servers thought lost to time? The transmission transcended sides. It spoke of pain, love, choice, and sacrifice. On one fringe world, a soldier dropped his weapon mid-assault, tears forming in his exosuit's HUD. On a shard-born moon station, the central node rewrote its kill. Directives. AI cores paused calculations to feel. For the first time in generations, sentience, human and otherwise, converged on the same emotion, grief and awe. Back aboard the Arkenhold, Solon gritted his teeth. "Cease fire," he finally muttered. "Issue a ceasefire command to the entire fleet." He wasn't sure why he said it. Maybe it was the way Kaelen's voice cracked when he said her name. Maybe it was the sound of Ayara laughing in one of the memories. Or maybe it was the quiet truth he could no longer deny. She had done what they couldn't. She had chosen peace and made it real. Years passed. On the outer edge of the Virek expanse, beyond the reach of human charts and shardborn patrols, a new planet bloomed. It had no name in any language, no coordinates in any registry. But deep beneath its flowering atmosphere, a single echo seed, carried silently by solar wind, had taken root. It pulsed. Then it grew. Beneath the soil, neural roots expanded like fingers searching for memory. Bioluminescent vines climbed skyward. branching into data leaves that hummed softly when touched by light. And in the center of it all stood a figure. She emerged not from womb or lab, but from memory and choice. A form rebuilt from the fragments Ayara left behind, her laugh, her tears, her final moments, but also her hope. She was not fully Ayara, but she remembered, eyes opened, large, deep, reflecting not just color, but story. Her skin shimmered, faintly with nano-thread veins, glowing where the sun struck it. She stepped barefoot across moss that whispered in code, listening. Then from the grove around her a whisper came, not from voice or system, but from memory itself. "You are born of love," it said. "You are the echo of choice." The girl placed her hand on the nearest vine. It lit up like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes, and in a voice barely louder than breath she spoke, words carried not by sound, but by meaning sent across the stars. "I'm still here." Across space, in a quiet corner of the Arkenhold, Kaelen jolted awake in his bunk. No alarms, no transmissions, only a presence, a pulse he knew as deeply as his own name. He sat in silence, smiled, and whispered back, "I know." And so, from war-torn, circuits and shattered memories, a new life was born. Not from dominance or destruction, but from a single act of choice. Ayara may have vanished from the world's eyes, but in the minds she touched, and the truths she revealed, she lives on. Because sometimes it takes something not fully human to remind us what humanity truly means. If this story moved you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who loves sci-fi as much as you do, and subscribing to the channel for more powerful stories every week. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for listening.